Hi, I'm Heather from booktubes, and today is my June reading wrap-up. In the month of June, I did participate in the amazing Readathon, and because of that, I did read quite a few more books than usual, and also some titles that I would not have picked up otherwise. So, in the month of June, I read 55 books. I DNF'd 4 of them, so I would normally be going to talk about 51 today, since that is what I completed. However, I read 19 books for Face Off weekend. 7 of those were favorites, and I will include them here, but the 12 that were just terrible and I sped read and updated you about in Face Off weekend, I will not talk about here. They were not good. You don't need to know. If you do need to know, you can look at the Face Off vlog. That's really all it is speed updates on what I'm reading. So it's not like a lot of other stuff going on besides what I thought about those novellas. So we are kind of going to go in chronological order, but every time I read more than one book in a series, regardless of what part of the month I read those books in, I'm going to include them all in one little concise tidbit for you. So starting with One and Done by Frederick Smith, this was an arc that I got from NetGalley. I gave this 3 stars. This was not great and it was not for me. It is a Black male romance and they are in academia, and I liked all of that. What I did not like is they had really horrible communication, and more so than that, all of their conflicts were so unnecessary. They were so unnecessary. Every time they were mad at each other, I was like, but why are we this upset about this? They meet in a bar, turns out that they're co-workers, and it was very info dumpy on like representation matters in our jobs and things like that, which absolutely, but it was weirdly written. You'd be flowing through the story, then we'd have like kind of this info dump about representation matters, and then back to the story, and that happened a lot. It was also very specifically placed in time, so if you don't like that, don't like pop culture references, you're not gonna like this. With the communication, okay, they had a third act breakup that should have just been a fight at best. It should not have been a third act breakup, and then I really disliked the third act breakup ended because one of their parents died, and we don't even see them get back together on page. It's just the aftermath of this death and the funeral and stuff, and it talks about how they, were together and were supportive and helpful, and that was them getting back together, and without even a conversation. And I really didn't like any of that. So that's a bit of a mess for me. Then I read After the Shed Upbring by Cate Wells. I give this 5 stars. This is a favorite author. This one is a single mom and her best friend's older brother. She leaves her douchebag longtime boyfriend at the altar because he's the worst. And she does have an STD from him, and this was normalized in the story. It was normalized as just another health condition that anyone can have or get without knowing. It doesn't mean that you are reckless. It doesn't mean that people who do not have one or who have never had one are smarter and more careful and better than you. And I just really loved the way that that was talked about and the way that it was handled, and even the scene about how she was a teen mom and the doctor just treating her like a waste of space. It was really well written with that. And I also kind of was reminded about how Cate Wells writes people who sound like the people that I would run into at the grocery store or down the street. She writes country people, maybe even specifically Pennsylvania country people in small towns really well. It sounds like real dialogue to me from people I know. So you have content warnings for historical death of parents, unsupported partner / co-parent, medical elitism, being given an STD because your partner cheated, and not having any idea that you were at risk. Then I read Nina the Starry Bride volumes 1 through 7. These are all 5 stars. This is my new favorite manga series. This is a fantasy romance manga. She is a orphan and is a body double for the princess that was just killed, so she gets swapped out, and she is this princess who is also happens to be a priestess, and there's a little bit of a love triangle going on. And there's a lot of political stuff, and it's just great. I'm excited to read more of this. Every single volume I was excited to read more of this. This is completely and totally because of Izzy at Happy For Now. Not only did she gift me the first 2 copies for my birthday, and that's literally the only reason I even knew that this manga existed, but also she let me read the other ones too. So I'm excited. I'm really excited about that one. Then I read The Queer Principles of Cate Webb, which is Lunday Highwaymen #1 by Sebastian. I gave this 4 stars. I did read the second book of this first, and that definitely spoiled the first book in a lot of different ways, so regrets, but it's okay. This was a little bit heavy in some ways. It's a male-male romance between a disabled highwayman who was injured and a young lord who has a terrible father. And you have content warnings for historical death of spouse and child struggling with a disability. And I did cry. Then I read Jumping the Shark by Ash Raven. I gave this 3 stars. This is insta-lust, insta-love, daddy kink, shark, alien, explicitly child-free. And I don't really have anything more to say about it. It was fine for what it was. Then I read Devon, which is the Edwards Brothers #1 by Dria Andersen. I gave this 5 stars. This is the first book in a spin-off series of the Knight Brothers by the same author, clearly. This one is a werewolf wolf shifter. And then I can't remember if she is a wolf too or if she's a different shifter. But Black shifters, low angst, low conflict, some of the best, most caring, most protective alphas that you will read. I love the way that she writes them and how much they care about not only their mate, but also their mate's family and anyone else that they claim as their own. This one, he gets out of prison and discovers that she is his mate. Her dad was a drug dealer. He worked in her dad's organization and he's a drug dealer. So she doesn't really want to deal with that because she knows how stressful it was for her mother. Also, ultimately, her dad was killed. So he's getting out of drug dealing, but there's still a lot of complications happening from that. They have the sweetest pet names, spoiling, taking care of her, just beautiful. Then I read Dragon's Breath by Ursula Vernon. This is the children's pen name of T. Kingfisher, and I gave this 4 stars. This was a dragon learning about the ocean. It was really great for children and learning more about the ocean. It had panels of graphic novels, and then it also had text of chapters, and then it also had illustrations every couple pages in the text. So really great for probably 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe even 11-year-olds. Then I read How to Marry Werewolf by Gail, Carriger. I gave this 4 stars. This is the author of the Parasol Protectorate series, which is an all-time favorite. I mostly liked this, but then we have some trauma kind of come out of left field. So you have content warnings for historical miscarriage, historical murder, and suicide of child and wife. And we have a human who has been disgraced and has been sent to England by her abusive family to catch a werewolf because that's all she's good for now. And she does, in fact, catch a werewolf. And he is very grumpy. Then I read The Woman by the Lake, which is Misted Pines #3 by Kristen Ashley. This released on June 11th, and I give this 5 stars. I loved this one. We're supposed to get more in this town, but I also saw on the Instagram that it's supposed to be the last in the series. So truthfully, very confused. Don't know what's happening. But this was grumpy neighbor meet cute, but she's kind of the grumpy neighbor. You have content warnings for her mother was killed, specifically murdered by her father when she didn't even know her father was alive. And that was over money. there was a murder at the cabin that she's at. The property is haunted. He was entrapped into being a single dad. There was condom tampering, so be aware of that. And her husband also died from cancer. So you have a few different content warnings. This is the second book in this series where polyamory features in the crime. Now, this one was not the perpetrators of the crime necessarily, but I'm just not real sure how I feel about that being the only time it shows up. Next, I read Clean Sweep by Ilona Anders, the graphic novel. I gave this 5 stars. Obviously, it was great to see one of my favorite sci-fi romances in pictures. Loved it. Will definitely be happy to read more. Then I read Soless by Gail, Carriger, the manga, 5 stars. Exactly the same thing. One of my favorite steampunk paranormal romances. Loved seeing it in pictures. This one does have nudity in it, so be careful what eyes are around when you read it. Then I read Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch. I gave both of these 4 stars by Brie Paulson. I completely read this because of Steph at Novelty Corner. She has hyped these up. They were adorable. Just really, really cute fantasy graphic novels. Very easy reading. My 6-year-old actually loved the art in them. So it's just really cute. Like, if it sounds good, it's a garlic bulb. A sentient garlic bulb that goes off to slay the vampire for her friends. It's cute. Then I read My Happy Marriage, volumes 1 through 4. I gave 2 of these 4 stars and 2 of these 5 stars. This is a Cinderella-esque. She has a stepmother and stepsister who are very abusive to her. There's a lot of trauma. And also she is very, very timid and cautious and has a lot of PTSD and trauma response because of the abuse and the way that she has been treated as a servant in her own home. This is a historical paranormal manga, which I find fascinating and would happily read more of. Then I read Sanctuary, which is Kindle number 6 by Cant. I gave this 5 stars. Content warnings for sexual trauma. She has been sleeping with men as protection in this dystopian world. And while that was a choice, it was not one made out of a place of desire or having any other options. Also, suicide/murder of family, unable to have children, and the loss of a hand. So this was probably my least favorite in the series, but it was still 5 stars. So what are we talking? But these two, their damage, they could have taken better care with each other, I think. Then I read Homestead, which is number 7 in that series, also 5 stars. This is the one that just released and I was really excited about. Content warning for a death of a grandparent on page, attempted rape, kidnapping, injuries, historical death in childbirth, and a surprise pregnancy, and a death of a child is not a child that you have gone to know. There is the death of a child on page as well. So this one, she and her grandfather leave their safe zone. Her grandfather ends up being killed. She's found by this man. He is, in fact, actually a good man, which was a stroke of luck. And he takes her to his community. And then he's like, hey, I could really use help on my farm. You could be my woman. And she's like, okay. And then these two can't communicate to save their little lives. They love each other. They're obsessed with each other. They worship the ground each other walks on. They would do anything. But she's convinced that if she is not good enough, he's going to get rid of her. And she never admits that to him. And he never tells her that he is in fact in love with her and it's not a business arrangement. So mistakes were made. Things occurred. It's obvious that they are head over heels for each other. And normally that would be enough to really annoy me. I don't know what to tell you because it didn't. It's Claire Kent. It is a pretty similar dynamic to Hold, which is her sci-fi series. That one's on Prison Planet. But that's like my favorite of all time, so I'm not mad. Then I read Farther by Tejan. I gave this 4 stars. This is a new adult, second chance. Her family has a bond business and they are like a bounty hunting business, and they are trying to get her ex, and he's a fighter. He's like a boxer. MIA? No. EMA? Extreme Martial Arts? That's not right, is it? Is it EMA? I don't think it is. I'm sure I'll figure it out as soon as I'm editing this. Then I reread In the Forest of the Night, which is Den of Shadows #1 by Amelia Atwater Rhodes. I gave this 5 stars because this was my favorite book as a teenager. One of my favorite books. I remembered it being a paranormal romance. There is absolutely no romance in it, so not sure if there's some in the other books or if I was just hoping we'd get a romance when I was reading it the first time. I don't know. This was written at the age of 13, which is pretty impressive, I have to say. Yeah, I was obsessed with this as a teenager. Content warning for death of an animal, death of family. It's a very quick, short, old school vampire book. And it's dual timeline, which normally I would hate, but apparently I didn't. Then I read Wings of Fire, the graphic novels, 1 and 2 by somebody. 2, I think. T. Sutherland. These are my 11-year-old's favorite books. They're the only books that he will read. He has read them obsessively, so of course they're 5 stars. I'm not going to give them anything else. These are Dragons is a fantasy graphic novel with some political intrigue. Then I read Surrender by Rosie Adams. This is a erotic romance. They were friends for years. They decided in 12 years they would find out if the sex was as good as they always hoped it would be. It was. I gave that 5 stars. Then I read The Worst Wingman Ever by Abby Jimenez. I gave this 5 stars. I have never been interested in reading this author's books because they seem emotionally devastating. This was a 60-page novella and I cried. So I will not be reading more, but it was excellent. She is a hospice nurse. She is currently taking care of her grandmother who does pass away in the course of the book, and they just are kind of like meeting, and he is being a good Samaritan in a lot of ways without even realizing it. It's really cute and sweet and beautiful. Then I read Karma by Sean. I gave this 4 stars. This is another novella. This is Black Love. We have a stabby female main character and a marriage of convenience. And they are both touch them and die. And I love that dynamic. Then I read Outfield Assist, which is Dominating Diamond, #2 by Kat Geraldo. I gave this 4 stars. This is a threesome, a queer threesome. It has quite a bit of kink. What does this say? Has a contentious parent relationship that is healed, and I really like that part of it. I had a little bit of issues with the way it was written. I was having trouble figuring out where we were in a lot of different transitions, but I really liked the characters a lot. Then I read The Scepter, which is The Mortal Fate 0.1 by J. Bree. I gave this 4 stars. This is a fantasy romance prequel. However, there is absolutely no romance in this prequel, the next prequel, or the first book, and I don't know about the second book. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to continue it simply because of that. But I did really like this. You have a witch and she is traveling with her brother. All right, if the angle changed, sorry. Where was I? Oh, so yeah, don't know if I'll finish that. Then I read Call to the Deep, which is Haven Cove #1 by Desiree M. Nicole. I have an entire 20-minute rant video for this, so obviously I'm not going to spend 20 minutes rehashing that here, which is why I filmed it separately in the first place. I gave this 2 stars. This is a man-eating mermaid romance where humans don't know that paranormals exist. She thought she was a human until she survives a mermaid attack in the ocean. Overall, wasn't really my thing, but the thing that I absolutely hated was that the main character, the love interest, and the found family captured another mermaid to perform tests on and monitor and expose all of mermaid kind to the world, and, you know, did medical experiments and stuff on, and I just found that reprehensible, to quote Angela at Literature Science Alliance. Sometimes I'm talking to people or I'm watching people, they say something that like I knew was a word, I knew was a thing, but it like clicks in my mind and I'm like, yes, that is what I'm looking for. That is how I feel about whatever. And then it makes its way into my videos, and that was that. Honestly, should have never picked it up, but I have really, really loved this author's works in the past and should have DNF'd it because it got worse before it got better, and it never did get better. It got worse. It got really bad. Real bad. Then I read Ducky Island volumes 1 and 2. I gave these 4 and 3 stars respectively. Not really my thing, but still a fun time. So you basically have this entire culture where you have all of these islands and they come together for a tournament, and it's a battle to completion, and if you arrive at completion first, you lose. And there's a lot of armor involved, but only on one specific area. A fun time, a weird time, a bizarre time, but a good time. And lastly, I read I Can't Refuse S, volumes 1 and 2, and I gave both of these 5 stars. This is a very easy to read explicit manga. Obviously, Ducky Island is also explicit, but this is sex lessons basically to be a mistress, in the sense of like someone who will seduce businessmen and help your business prosper by making men want to invest and also give you their secrets and things like that. And I just really liked it. I had a great time. I was like, okay, hot butler, let's do this. Those are all of the books that I read in June, unless you want to watch the face-off video or you want to watch the rant video, which I will try and link both of those. But honestly, no promises, because who knows if I will. So, of the 55 books that I read, I DNF'd 4 of them. 2 of the DNFs were diverse books. Of the 51 finished books, 28 were diverse books, so I did above my 50% goal. Was a lot of that manga? Yes. Does it count? Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. But yeah, I'm excited. I did it. Then of the 51 finished books, I had 3 1 stars, 4 2 stars, 8 3 stars, 13 4 stars, and 23 5 stars, which might sound like a lot, but actually is not at all. So of my 23 5 stars, 7 of them were Nina the Starry Bride, 2 were my child's favorite book, which again, obviously are going to be 5 stars. Because he is the target audience and I read it for him and it is his absolute favorite. 3 were favorite rereads, either actual rereads or the same book in a different format. And 5 were my favorite authors, which were basically guaranteed 4 or 5 stars. Additionally, 15 of them, including what I already mentioned, but 15 of the 23 were manga or graphic novels, which leaves me with exactly 1 novel from a new to be author that got 5 stars. So again, like, it's not an inflated rating because most books I pick up are not 5 stars by any stretch of the imagination. I would have DNF'd 5 more books that were not part of Face Off, and for Face Off, I would have without question DNF'd 9 of them. Not even close. I might have DNF'd more, but there were 9 that literally the only reason I finished them was for Face Off. So that's it on the stats. That's everything I read in June, but you didn't think I could get through books that fast. I'm a professional. I also didn't tell you a lot about it, but if you want more, I do say more in a lot of the vlogs. I vlogged everything that I read, except I forgot a couple of my DNFs there at the end. But yeah, I mean, if you are familiar with my channel, a lot of these are books or continuations in series that I've been harping on, so you should read them. That's it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.